When my daughter-in-law told me not to come over anymore, I didn't say a word. I smiled instead of crying. Maybe that was my biggest mistake, pretending it didn't hurt. I went home that evening, carrying the small bag of groceries I had meant to cook for them. It had his favorite stew mix in it. I remember looking down at the vegetables, all fresh and neatly packed, and thinking how silly I was, a mother who still thought her grown son needed her cooking to feel loved. I sat by the window, the streetlight shining softly through the curtain, and I whispered to myself, "He's happy now. That's what matters." But deep down, I knew something had changed. When my son, Daniel, got married, I was the proudest mother alive. He had found someone kind, or at least I thought so. Her name was Emily, a quiet, polite young woman who worked in marketing. From the first time I met her, she seemed gentle. I told everyone how lucky I was. For the first few months after the wedding, things felt almost the same. He would call me every other day, asking if I'd eaten, telling me about his new home, about Emily's cooking, about how they were decorating their apartment together. I used to listen with a smile, picturing them arranging curtains and arguing about colors. But slowly, the calls became fewer. Then the visits stopped. And then, even the short text messages, "Love you, Mom," disappeared. I tried not to blame anyone. I told myself, this is what happens when children grow up. They have their own lives. But the truth is, it's hard to accept when the person you raised, the one whose every fever kept you awake, suddenly forgets how to say your name with love. The hardest part isn't losing their attention. It's realizing they don't see you as part of their world anymore. I still remember the day it all became clear, the day I realized my son had truly changed. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was just one quiet afternoon, standing in his kitchen, when he asked me, "Mom, could you please call before coming next time?" That was the moment. The moment I felt like a guest in my own child's life. I raised Daniel on my own. His father passed away when he was 9. It was sudden, a heart attack on a winter morning. One moment he was having breakfast, the next, it was just silence and a half-filled coffee cup on the table. After that day, it was just the two of us, me and my boy. We lived in a small 2-bedroom house in the suburbs. Nothing fancy, but it was warm and full of life. Daniel used to run down the hallway in his socks, sliding across the floor while laughing so loud that even the neighbors smiled when they heard him. He was a bright child, curious, kind, always asking questions. "Mom, do you think Dad can see us from heaven?" I used to pause before answering. "Yes, sweetheart. He's watching us and he's proud of you." And Daniel would nod, his little face serious, as if he could really feel it. Those were the years that shaped me too. I worked 2 jobs, mornings at the library, evenings at a diner. Sometimes, I'd come home so tired that I'd sit by his bed and just watch him sleep. I used to think, if I can just get him through school, just get him a good life, everything will be worth it. He grew up to be gentle, respectful, the kind of boy every teacher adored. He'd help me carry groceries, fix small things around the house, and every Mother's Day, he'd save his lunch money to buy me a small plant, not flowers that would die, he said, but something that could grow. I still have those plants on the windowsill. Some are nearly 20 years old now. Sound of a quiet breeze through curtains. When Daniel went off to college, the house felt empty for the first time. I remember walking into his room the day after he left. His bed was still made, his favorite mug still on the desk. That morning, I sat on his chair and cried quietly. Not because I was sad, but because I was proud that he had a chance at the life I always wanted for him. He'd call me every night at first. "Mom, I learned how to cook rice today. Mom, I aced my test. Mom, I miss your soup." Every mom sounded like a warm hug. And even when he got busier, I always felt close to him. When he graduated, he hugged me so tight I could hardly breathe. He whispered, "Everything I am is because of you." I thought that would always be true. Then he met Emily. He called one evening, his voice lighter than usual. "Mom, there's someone I want you to meet." I could tell right away, that tone, that excitement, my son was in love. I teased him, of course. "Oh? What's her name? Does she know you still can't fold laundry properly?" He laughed. "She's perfect, Mom." You'll like her. And I did at first. The first time Emily came over, she brought a box of pastries from a fancy bakery. She was polite, soft-spoken, always smiling. I made tea and tried my best to make her feel comfortable. She called me Mrs. Allen that day. I said, "Please call me Margaret." She smiled, "Maybe someday." I brushed it off. First meetings are always awkward. After that, Daniel brought her over often. Sometimes for dinner, sometimes just to say hello. I noticed how he looked at her, gentle, careful, protective. And I told myself, this is what every mother dreams of, their child loved by someone good. When they announced their engagement, I couldn't stop smiling. I cooked for days, calling relatives, telling everyone the news. At the engagement party, I remember Emily's parents, very proper, very polite, thanking me for raising such a fine son. I thought to myself, maybe now my family is complete again. The wedding came a year later. Daniel looked so handsome in his suit, standing at the altar, nervous and excited. When he saw me in the front row, he smiled, and for a moment, I saw my little boy again, the one who used to hold my hand crossing the street. But after the ceremony, as the guests laughed and music played, I caught a small moment that I didn't understand back then. Emily was talking with her friends, and someone asked, "So how's it living near his mom?" She smiled politely and said, "Oh, we'll move a bit farther after the wedding. It's better for privacy." I remember standing just close enough to hear those words. They stung, but I told myself it was normal. Newlyweds need their space. After the wedding, they moved across town, not far, maybe 40 minutes away. At first, Daniel visited every Sunday. We'd eat lunch, talk about his work, about their apartment. Sometimes Emily came, sometimes she said she was busy. And that was okay. I didn't want to intrude. But then, Sundays turned into phone calls. And phone calls turned into short text messages. Eventually, even those stopped coming unless I started them first. Still, I kept myself busy. I joined a book club, volunteered at the library again, tried to stay positive. But every mother knows when something is slipping away. It's in the small silences. The shorter replies. The way your child says, "I'll call you later," but never does. One evening, I decided to surprise them. I baked Daniel's favorite pie, apple crumble, with extra cinnamon, just the way he liked it. I packed it carefully, wrapped it in foil, and took a taxi to their place. When I rang the bell, Emily opened the door. She looked surprised, not happy, not angry, just surprised. "Oh, Mrs. Allen. Hi. Daniel didn't say you were coming." "I wanted to surprise you both," I said with a smile. She stepped aside politely, but didn't look comfortable. "Of course. Come in." Daniel was on the couch, laptop open. When he saw me, he smiled, but it was quick, like an obligation. "Mom. Hey, you didn't tell me you were coming. I thought I'd bring you some pie. It's been a while." He thanked me, took the dish, and that was it. No hug, no excitement. We talked for a while, about work, the weather, ordinary things. Emily mostly stayed in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone. After a short while, she came over and said softly, "Daniel, we still have that dinner reservation tonight." He nodded quickly. I understood. I wasn't wanted there for long. So I stood up, brushed my coat, and said I should get going. "Enjoy your evening." Daniel looked a bit guilty. "Mom, you didn't have to leave so soon." But he didn't stop me either. In the elevator, holding the empty pie container, I felt something heavy settle inside me. It wasn't anger. It was the quiet sadness of realizing you've become an afterthought. When I got home, the house felt colder than usual. I sat in the dark for a while, thinking about how time changes everything, how love that once filled a home can turn into silence without a single argument. When they announced their engagement, I couldn't stop smiling. I cooked for days, calling relatives, telling everyone the news. At the engagement party, I remember Emily's parents, very proper, very polite, thanking me for raising such a fine son. I thought to myself, maybe now my family is complete again. The wedding came a year later. Daniel looked so handsome in his suit, standing at the altar, nervous and excited. When he saw me in the front row, he smiled, and for a moment, I saw my little boy again, the one who used to hold my hand crossing the street. But after the ceremony, as the guests laughed and music played, I caught a small moment that I didn't understand back then. Emily was talking with her friends, and someone asked, "So how's it living near his mom?" She smiled politely and said, "Oh, we'll move a bit farther after the wedding. It's better for privacy." I remember standing just close enough to hear those words. They stung, but I told myself it was normal. Newlyweds need their space. After the wedding, they moved across town, not far, maybe 40 minutes away. At first, Daniel visited every Sunday. We'd eat lunch, talk about his work, about their apartment. Sometimes Emily came, sometimes she said she was busy. And that was okay. I didn't want to intrude. But then, Sundays turned into phone calls. And phone calls turned into short text messages. Eventually, even those stopped coming unless I started them first. Still, I kept myself busy. I joined a book club, volunteered at the library again, tried to stay positive. But every mother knows when something is slipping away. It's in the small silences. The shorter replies. The way your child says, "I'll call you later," but never does. And yet, I still believed things would go back to normal. I still believed that he'd call again, just like before. But sometimes, what we believe in most is the thing that drifts away the fastest. After that night with the apple pie, things felt different. It wasn't something I could name, not a fight, not a falling out, just a quiet space that started to grow between us. A space filled with polite words and careful smiles. I told myself to give them time. Newlyweds need room to build their own rhythm. But weeks turned into months, and that room became a wall. Daniel still called sometimes, but always in a hurry. "Hi, Mom, can't talk long, just checking in." And before I could ask how he was really doing, he'd already be saying goodbye. I started marking his calls on the calendar, small red dots for every time I heard his voice. There were fewer and fewer dots each month. One Sunday, I texted him, "Thinking of you. Made your favorite stew today." He replied hours later, "Thanks, Mom. We already ate." Nothing more. I tried to stay patient. I told myself not to be that kind of mother, the one who clings or complains. So instead, I poured my energy into small things, gardening, volunteering, reading. But no matter how many books I read, the evenings felt long. Every sound in the house reminded me of when Daniel used to be there, the creak of the stairs, the whistle of the kettle, even the TV's soft hum. Sometimes I'd find myself setting an extra plate at dinner, out of habit. Then I'd quietly put it back in the cupboard and pretend not to notice. A few months later, Daniel called with news. "Mom, we're buying a house." My heart lifted. "Oh, that's wonderful. Where?" "Over in Westbrook Heights. It's closer to Emily's work." "That's a bit far from here, isn't it?" He hesitated. "Yeah, about an hour's drive. But we'll visit, I promise." I congratulated him, told him how proud I was. When we hung up, I sat quietly for a long time. An hour's drive isn't far, but sometimes distance isn't measured in miles. When moving day came, I offered to help. He thanked me but said they'd hired movers. I packed a small housewarming basket anyway, some towels, kitchen spices, a photo of us from his graduation, and drove there myself. I tried to stay patient. I told myself not to be that kind of mother, the one who clings or complains. So instead, I poured my energy into small things, gardening, volunteering, reading. But no matter how many books I read, the evenings felt long. Every sound in the house reminded me of when Daniel used to be there, the creak of the stairs, the whistle of the kettle, even the TV's soft hum. Sometimes I'd find myself setting an extra plate at dinner, out of habit. Then I'd quietly put it back in the cupboard and pretend not to notice. A few months later, Daniel called with news. "Mom, we're buying a house." My heart lifted. "Oh, that's wonderful. Where?" "Over in Westbrook Heights. It's closer to Emily's work." "That's a bit far from here, isn't it?" He hesitated. "Yeah, about an hour's drive. But we'll visit, I promise." I congratulated him, told him how proud I was. When we hung up, I sat quietly for a long time. An hour's drive isn't far, but sometimes distance isn't measured in miles. When moving day came, I offered to help. He thanked me but said they'd hired movers. I packed a small housewarming basket anyway, some towels, kitchen spices, a photo of us from his graduation, and drove there myself. Their new house was lovely. Bright, modern, spotless, everything in its place. Emily greeted me politely. "Oh, Mrs. Allen, you didn't have to come all this way." "I wanted to see your new home," I said, smiling. "And I brought a few things." She looked at the basket and said, "That's very kind. Just put it on the counter." Daniel was busy giving instructions to the movers. When he finally came over, he hugged me quickly, the kind of hug people give when others are watching. We chatted a little, but it was mostly small talk. When I mentioned the photo frame, Emily smiled tightly. "Oh, that's sweet. We'll find a place for it." Later, I noticed it wasn't on any shelf. Maybe she preferred a different style, I thought. Maybe I'm reading too much into things. Few weeks later, I called Daniel one afternoon. No answer. Then another day, another call, still nothing. When he finally picked up, his voice was low. "Sorry, Mom. Things have been crazy. Work's exhausting, and Emily's parents were visiting." "That's all right," I said gently. "I just wanted to hear your voice." There was a pause. "Yeah, I know, Mom. We'll plan a dinner soon, okay?" But soon never came. I waited. Birthdays, holidays, they all passed quietly. For his birthday, I sent a card and a gift card to his favorite store. He texted back, "Thanks, Mom. You didn't have to." No visit. No call. That Christmas was the hardest. Every year, Daniel and I had a tradition. We'd bake cookies together. He'd roll the dough too thin, I'd tease him, and we'd laugh until midnight. But that year, he said they were spending the holidays with Emily's family. "Just this once, Mom," he said. I said it was fine. Then I hung up and stood in my kitchen, looking at the empty counter where the flour should have been. I baked the cookies anyway. I packed them neatly in a tin, tied it with ribbon, and mailed it to their address. Days passed. No message, no call. Just silence. One afternoon, in early spring, I ran into a neighbor who had known Daniel since he was little. She asked, "How's your boy doing? Haven't seen him around in ages." I smiled and said, "Oh, he's busy, married now." Then she said softly, "They grow up fast, don't they?" I nodded, but inside, something ached. Later that evening, I decided to visit again, not unannounced this time. I called first. Emily answered. "Oh, hi, Mrs. Allen. Daniel's at work right now. I can come by later," I said. She hesitated. "Maybe next weekend? We have plans tonight." Her voice wasn't rude, just firm. That night, I realized how careful she was with her boundaries. Maybe too careful. A week later, Daniel called. He sounded uneasy. "Mom, can I talk to you about something?" "Of course," I said. Emily feels, sometimes you drop by without much notice. She gets anxious about that. I paused, feeling my heart sink. "I understand." I didn't mean to bother her. "I know you didn't. It's just, we need our space, you know." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Yes, Daniel. I understand." After we hung up, I sat by the window again, staring at the small plants he'd given me years ago. For the first time, I wondered if he'd remember those days, the laughter, the small home, the promise that we'd always stay close. As months went by, contact became minimal. Sometimes I'd get photos on holidays, group pictures, all smiles, but I wasn't in them. I'd save them anyway. Every Sunday, I still cooked his favorite meal. And even though he rarely came, I couldn't bring myself to stop. Cooking for him had become a way of keeping him close, even if only in memory. One day, I got a call from my friend Linda. "Margaret, have you talked to Daniel lately?" "Not much." "Why?" "Oh, I saw him and Emily at the mall last week. They looked good, but he seemed surprised when I mentioned you." "Surprised?" "Yes," he said. "Oh, I haven't seen Mom in a while. She's doing okay though." That line stayed with me. She's doing okay though. Like I was some distant relative he barely thought about. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept wondering what I had done wrong. Was I too involved? Too caring? Not caring enough? Mothers replay everything, every word, every moment, searching for clues. A few weeks later, Daniel invited me to a small gathering, his housewarming, months late. I was excited. Finally, a chance to see them both again. I baked, bought a nice gift, and arrived on time. There were about 10 people there, Emily's friends mostly. Daniel greeted me, but he looked distracted. During dinner, I tried to join conversations, but most of them were about things I didn't know: vacations, office politics, new restaurants. At one point, someone asked Emily, "Does Daniel cook?" She laughed and said, "Oh no. He can't even boil water." I had to teach him everything. Everyone laughed. And I smiled politely, even though inside, it hurt. Because I remembered teaching him to make his first omelet when he was 10. Later that evening, as people left, Emily turned to me and said, "It was nice of you to come." There was no warmth in her tone, but there was politeness. That's all there ever was: polite distance. When I got home that night, I realized something. I wasn't part of Daniel's new life. I was just an old chapter he didn't reread. Still, I didn't want to give up. So when Daniel's birthday came again, I called. No answer. I left a message: "Happy birthday, sweetheart. I love you." He texted later that evening, "Thanks, Mom. Busy day. Talk soon." Talk soon. But soon never comes when someone's already moved on in their heart. Weeks later, a package arrived at my door. Inside was the photo frame I'd given them, the one from his graduation. No note, just the frame, neatly wrapped. I sat there staring at it for a long time. Maybe they were redecorating, I told myself. Maybe it didn't fit their style. But deep down, I knew it was their way of clearing space. I placed the photo back on my shelf. It felt like closing a door quietly, without slamming it. A small act of goodbye, even if I never said the words. That was the moment I began to understand. Sometimes love doesn't end with arguments or tears. Sometimes it just fades, quietly, politely, without anyone noticing until it's gone. And once it's gone, you can't chase it back. All you can do is stand still and let it hurt. It happened on a quiet Saturday afternoon. I remember because I had just finished folding the laundry and decided to call Daniel. He didn't answer. A few minutes later, he texted, "At work, Mom. Everything okay?" I wrote back, "Yes. Just wanted to check in." He didn't reply after that. The following weekend, I baked muffins and thought I'd bring them over. I called first, just to be sure. Emily picked up. "Hi, Mrs. Allen." "Hello, dear. I made some muffins for you and Daniel. Would this afternoon be a good time to drop them off?" There was a pause long enough for me to hear my own heartbeat. Then she said, "Actually, we're heading out soon. Maybe another day." "Of course," I said quickly. "Whenever it's convenient." 2 weeks passed. No invitation came. The muffins stayed in the freezer until I eventually threw them out. A month later, Daniel finally called. "Mom, can we talk about something?" "Sure," I said, trying to sound cheerful. He hesitated. "Emily feels a bit uncomfortable when you come by unexpectedly. It's nothing personal. It's just, she likes her space." I swallowed hard. "I always call now." "I know, Mom. She just needs a little time. Things have been stressful at work." "All right," I whispered. "I understand." But I didn't really understand. I only knew that the little pieces of my world were being put quietly out of reach. After that, I stopped calling first. I waited to see if he would. Sometimes he did. Most times he didn't. One afternoon, I was at the grocery store and saw his favorite cereal on sale. Without thinking, I bought a box. Later that day, I wrapped it with a small note, just a little something for breakfast. "Love, Mom." I drove to their house, telling myself I'd just drop it at the door and leave. When I arrived, I saw Emily watering the plants on the porch. She looked surprised. "Mrs. Allen, hello." "Hi, Emily. I was in the area and thought I'd leave this for Daniel." Her smile was polite but tight. "That's thoughtful. You could have called first." "I didn't want to bother you." "I'll just leave it here." She nodded. "I'll make sure he gets it." I turned to go, but Daniel's car pulled into the driveway. He stepped out, smiling when he saw me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "Just dropping something off." He glanced at Emily, then back at me. "You didn't have to. You know we have everything we need." I laughed softly. "I know. But mothers do these things." He gave a half smile. "Okay, well, thanks." There was nothing unkind in his voice, yet something inside me folded. I realized I wasn't needed anymore. That evening, he called. "Mom, listen," he said gently. "Maybe give us a bit more notice next time, okay?" "Of course," I said. "I didn't mean to overstep." "I know you didn't." He paused. "Love you, Mom." "I love you too." But after we hung up, I sat at the table for a long time, staring at the phone as if it might ring again. Weeks later, he invited me for dinner. It had been months since I'd been to their house. I put on my best dress and brought a small bouquet of lilies. When I arrived, everything was perfect, the table set, candles lit, food warm. Emily greeted me politely, offered me wine, and asked about my garden. Her words were kind, but her eyes kept glancing at the clock. During dinner, Daniel talked mostly about work. Emily smiled when he spoke, adding small comments here and there. I tried to join in, but the rhythm between them was tight, practiced. I felt like an outsider listening to a show that had already been rehearsed. After dessert, Emily cleared the plates. When she came back, she looked at Daniel, then at me. "Mrs. Allen," she said carefully, "I hope you don't take this the wrong way. I appreciate that you care about us. But sometimes, the surprise visits make me anxious. We're trying to have our own routine." I nodded slowly. "I understand. I won't come without calling." She hesitated, then said softly, "Maybe it's best if you let us invite you when we're ready. That way, it won't be stressful for anyone." The room went quiet. Daniel reached for her hand under the table, and I saw it, the unity between them, the silent agreement that I was now outside their circle. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Instead, I smiled. "Of course, dear. Whatever makes you comfortable." Daniel looked relieved. "Thanks, Mom. I knew you'd understand." That was the moment my heart cracked, not loudly, just a quiet break inside that no one heard. I stayed a little longer, helped clear the table, thanked them for dinner. Before I left, Daniel walked me to the door. He hugged me, light and brief. "Drive safe, okay?" "I will." When he closed the door behind me, I stood on the porch for a while, listening to the muffled laughter inside. Then I walked to my car and sat there until the windows fogged. On the drive home, I kept thinking about the word invite. How strange it felt to need an invitation to see my own son. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed everything, every word, every gesture. Had I been too present? Too eager? Or was this simply what happens when life moves forward and leaves some of us behind? In the morning, I looked around the house. Everything reminded me of Daniel, the books he used to read, the old sweater hanging by the door, the half-finished puzzle we'd started years ago. For the first time, I thought about packing some of it away. Maybe if I cleared the space, the ache would be smaller. Days turned into weeks. He didn't call. Neither did I. Silence became the new language between us. Then one evening I received a short message. "Hope you're doing okay." "We're good." I stared at it for a long time. A part of me wanted to reply, "I'm lonely, Daniel. I miss you." But I didn't. I simply wrote, "I'm fine. Take care." That was when I realized the truth. My son hadn't just changed after he got married. He had built a life where I no longer fit. It wasn't anyone's fault. Not Emily's, not even his. It was just time doing what time always does, separating what used to be one heart into two different lives. And so, quietly, I began to let go. After that night, I decided to stop waiting for the phone to ring. I didn't delete Daniel's number or shut the world out. I just let the silence be what it was. Every morning I still made tea for two, but I drank both cups myself. One for the woman I used to be, one for the mother learning how to stand alone. It was hard in the beginning. Habit is a stubborn thing. I'd still catch myself looking at the clock around the hour he used to call. I'd still reach for my phone when something funny happened at the market. Then I'd remember there was no one waiting on the other side of the story. I started walking in the park after breakfast. At first it was just to fill the hours, but soon I began to notice the small things again. The way the sunlight landed on the benches, the chatter of children chasing pigeons, the smell of freshly cut grass. It reminded me that life keeps moving whether or not someone walks beside you. A few people from the neighborhood began to recognize me. We'd nod, exchange a few words. One woman, Clara, often sat on the same bench reading. We started bringing each other coffee on cold mornings. We didn't talk much, but her quiet company was enough. At home, I began sorting through old boxes. There were photos of Daniel at every age: his first day of school, the day he lost his first tooth, the graduation picture where he's holding the certificate too high because he was proud. For each one, I remembered the sound of his laughter, the way he used to run into my arms. I realized I didn't need new memories to keep loving him. The old ones were still alive. One afternoon, while clearing the closet, I found the small backpack he used to take to kindergarten. Inside was a note in a child's handwriting: "I love you, Mom." The paper was yellowed, the ink faded, but the words still felt warm. I held it for a long time and whispered, "I love you too, sweetheart." That evening, I wrote him a letter. Not to send, just to say everything I couldn't over the phone. I wrote about the garden, about the neighbor's new dog, about how I was learning to sleep without waiting for footsteps in the hall. And at the end I wrote, "I'm proud of you, Daniel. Wherever you are, be kind. Love doesn't end just because distance begins." Then I folded it and placed it inside the backpack. Little by little, peace came back into the house. It didn't arrive suddenly, it seeped in quietly through the windows, the way morning light does. I started baking again, not because anyone was coming over, but because I liked the smell. I read books just for the joy of reading. Sometimes I laughed at something small, a silly commercial, a memory, and the sound no longer surprised me. One day, nearly a year later, my phone rang. It was Daniel. "Hi, Mom." Hearing his voice startled me. "Daniel, it's been a while. How are you?" "I'm good," he said. "Listen, Emily and I wanted to check on you. We heard from Linda that you weren't feeling well." "Oh, I just had a little cold," I said lightly. "Nothing serious." There was a pause. "I'm sorry we haven't visited," he said. "It's all right," I answered. "You're busy. That's how life goes." He hesitated, then asked, "Do you need anything?" "No, dear. I have everything I need." It was true. After we hung up, I didn't cry. I just sat quietly, letting the warmth of the call settle inside me. It wasn't much, but it was enough. A few months later, he sent a photo by message. A picture of him and Emily in their new garden, smiling. Under it, he wrote, "Thought you'd like this." I replied, "I do. It's beautiful. I'm happy for you both." And I was. Not in the old way that begged for closeness, but in a calm way that wished him well from a distance. Sometimes people think love is proven by presence. But I learned it can also be proven by quiet, by allowing someone to live freely even when you miss them. That kind of love doesn't shout. It waits, it forgives, it keeps its shape no matter how far it has to stretch. I still keep the small house the same. The plants on the windowsill are older now, taller. Each time I water them, I think of Daniel and smile. He planted the first one when he was 5. Maybe one day he'll remember that. Maybe he won't. Either way, it's all right. Because love, real love, doesn't demand to be seen. It just stays quietly, like the air in a room you've lived in your whole life. I often sit by the window these days. The same window where I once waited for Daniel's car to pull up. Now I just watch the world go by, the children on bicycles, the neighbor watering his plants, the mailman making his rounds. Life has its own rhythm, and I've learned to follow it, one quiet day at a time. There's peace in small things now. The sound of boiling tea, the smell of freshly washed clothes, the softness of an evening breeze. I used to think love only lived in grand moments, birthdays, holidays, big gestures. But I see now it lives quietly too. In the act of remembering, in the patience of letting go, in the simple wish that someone you love stays happy, even if you're not part of their daily life anymore. Sometimes people ask me if I'm lonely. I smile and say, not really. Because loneliness is different from being alone. Loneliness feels empty, but being alone, that can feel peaceful. I have memories, and they keep me company. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still hear Daniel's laughter from when he was little, echoing down the hallway. That sound, though it belongs to the past, still makes the present feel full. I see families at the park, young mothers chasing toddlers, fathers carrying sleepy children, and I don't feel envy anymore. I feel gratitude. Because I had those years too. I had those arms around my neck, those tiny hands tugging at my clothes, those sleepless nights and endless hugs. Nothing can take that away. Motherhood doesn't end when your child grows up. It just changes its shape. Once in a while, Daniel calls. Not often, but enough. Sometimes just to ask how I am, sometimes to tell me something funny from his week. We don't talk about the past. We just talk like two people who care about each other, quietly, carefully. And that's enough for me. There's a kind of strength that comes with acceptance, not the loud kind that fights to be heard, but the gentle kind that smiles even when the heart still feels tender. It's the strength of knowing you did your best, even if things didn't turn out the way you hoped. It's the peace that comes when you stop asking why and start saying thank you. I thank life for giving me a son to love, for the moments we had, and even for the distance that taught me how deep love can really go. Because love that survives silence, that's the strongest kind. If Daniel ever reads this or hears this story someday, I hope he understands that I never stopped loving him. Not for a single day. I just learned to love him differently, from afar, quietly, without asking for anything in return. And maybe that's what motherhood truly is. Not holding on, but learning when to let go with grace. I close my eyes and whisper, I did my best. That's enough. Then I smile. Because it is.